In the heart of a busy city, nestled among towering buildings and bustling streets, stood a small but charming restaurant named Bella's Bistro. It wasn't one of those fancy places with crystal chandeliers or expensive menus, but it had its own kind of magic. The warm yellow lights glowed softly through the windows, inviting passers-by to step inside. The smell of freshly baked garlic bread and simmering pasta sauces filled the air, making everyone who entered feel instantly at home. For years, Bella's had been a favorite spot for locals looking for comfort food and friendly service. The man behind this cozy little bistro was Alan Carter, a middle-aged businessman with salt and pepper hair and a quiet demeanor. Alan had inherited the restaurant from his parents, who had poured their hearts into building it from scratch. Though he loved the place dearly, running a business wasn't easy, especially in such a competitive city. Over time, Alan found himself spending more time in boardrooms and less on the restaurant floor. He missed the days when he could personally greet every customer and ensure everything ran smoothly. But lately, something didn't feel right. Complaints about slow service and disorganized staff had started trickling in, and Alan couldn't ignore them any longer. Determined to understand what was going wrong, Alan decided to pay an unannounced visit to Bella's, but not as the owner. Instead, he dressed casually in faded blue jeans, a simple hoodie, and sneakers, blending in with the crowd. No one would recognize him like this. He wanted to see the restaurant through the eyes of an ordinary customer, to experience firsthand how things were really being managed when he wasn't around. That evening, Alan arrived at Bella's just as the dinner rush was beginning. Families, couples, and groups of friends filled nearly every table, chatting animatedly while waiters hurried back and forth carrying trays of food. The atmosphere buzzed with energy, but Alan quickly noticed something odd. There weren't enough staff members working that night. Normally, there would be at least 5 waiters handling the dining area, but tonight he counted only 3. The hostess looked flustered as she tried to manage reservations, and the bartender seemed overwhelmed by the number of drink orders piling up. Curious, Alan took a seat at a corner table near the window where he could observe without drawing attention. He ordered a cup of coffee and settled in to watch. As he sipped his drink, one person caught his eye, a young waitress moving swiftly between tables. She wore the standard black uniform of Bella's employees, her dark hair tied neatly into a ponytail. Her name tag read Mia. What struck Alan most was her calmness amidst the chaos. While other servers appeared stressed or rushed, Mia moved with purpose and efficiency. She greeted each customer with a genuine smile, refilled water glasses before they were even empty, and remembered orders without needing to write them down. Alan leaned back in his chair, intrigued. He watched as Mia juggled multiple tasks at once. When another waiter dropped a tray of utensils, spilling forks and knives all over the floor, Mia immediately stepped in to help clean up. Later, when the kitchen door swung open and the chef shouted that they were short-handed, Mia grabbed an apron and disappeared into the kitchen for a few minutes, returning later with plates of steaming hot food ready to be served. It was clear she wasn't just sticking to her assigned duties, she was filling in wherever needed. As the hours passed, Alan continued to observe Mia closely. He saw her handle difficult situations with grace. At one point, a frustrated customer complained loudly about their order being delayed. Instead of getting defensive, Mia listened patiently, apologized sincerely, and promised to check on the status of the meal. Minutes later, she returned with the dish, along with complimentary dessert as a gesture of goodwill. The customer's anger melted away, replaced by gratitude. Alan nodded approvingly. This girl knew how to turn a bad situation around. By now, the restaurant was packed, and the noise level had risen significantly. Yet despite the mounting pressure, Mia never lost her composure. She worked tirelessly, ensuring that no table felt neglected. Even when she accidentally spilled soup on her sleeve, she simply wiped it off with a napkin and kept going. Alan marveled at her resilience. Most people in her position would have crumbled under the weight of responsibility, but Mia thrived. Alan's thoughts drifted as he considered why someone so dedicated hadn't come to his attention sooner. Was it because he distanced himself from day-to-day operations? Had he become too focused on profit margins and forgotten about the people who made Bella's special? Watching Mia reminded him of the values his parents had instilled in him: hard work, kindness, and putting others first. Those principles had built Bella's bistro, but somewhere along the way, they had gotten lost. Finally, as the clock approached midnight, the crowd began to thin out. Alan lingered at his table, pretending to scroll through his phone while keeping one eye on Mia. She was still working, clearing tables and stacking chairs. Her movements were slower now, exhaustion evident in her posture, but she refused to stop until the job was done. Eventually, she removed her apron, said goodbye to her coworkers, and headed toward the exit. Alan followed discreetly, curious to see where she went next. Outside, the cool night air swept through the streets. Mia pulled her jacket tighter around herself and walked briskly toward the bus stop. She looked tired but content, her lips curved into a faint smile. Alan hesitated, tempted to approach her and introduce himself, but something held him back. Perhaps it was the realization that Mia didn't need validation from him. Not yet, anyway. For now, he would keep watching, learning, and planning. Whatever decision he made tomorrow, one thing was certain: Mia's actions that evening had left a lasting impression on him. Little did Alan know this chance encounter would set off a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. The bus ride home gave Mia a few moments of quiet reflection, though her mind was still buzzing from the whirlwind of the evening. She leaned her head against the window, watching the city lights blur past as the bus rumbled through the streets. Her feet ached, her shoulders were sore, and she could feel the exhaustion settling deep into her bones. But despite the physical toll, there was a small sense of satisfaction in knowing she'd done everything she could to keep Bella's running smoothly. That night had been chaotic. 3 coworkers had called in sick at the last minute, but Mia refused to let it get the better of her. She wasn't one to complain. Instead, she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. Back at the restaurant, Alan couldn't shake off what he'd witnessed. The image of Mia tirelessly moving between tables, stepping into roles that weren't hers, stayed with him long after she left. He knew he should head home too. It was late, and he had meetings early the next morning. But something compelled him to stay. He wanted to understand more about the inner workings of his own business, especially since he'd been absent for so long. So under the guise of needing to use the restroom, Alan slipped into the kitchen, blending in with the staff as they cleaned up after the dinner rush. What he saw there surprised him even further. The kitchen was a mess, pots and pans piled high in the sink, discarded food scraps scattered across counters, and steam rising from the industrial dishwasher working overtime. The chef, a burly man named Carlos, was barking orders while trying to finish prep work for the next day. 2 other kitchen assistants scurried around, barely keeping up. And there, right in the middle of it all, was Mia again. She wasn't just waiting tables anymore. She had rolled up her sleeves and joined the cleanup crew. Alan watched silently from the doorway as Mia scrubbed sauce stains off a large pot. Her hands moved quickly, efficiently, as if she'd done this kind of work countless times before. When Carlos noticed her helping, he muttered something under his breath. "If only we had 2 of her," he said gruffly, shaking his head. Another assistant chuckled nervously but didn't disagree. It was clear to everyone that Mia was carrying more than her fair share of the load. As Alan observed, he picked up fragments of conversation floating around the kitchen. One of the cooks mentioned how 3 employees had called in sick earlier that day, leaving them severely understaffed. Someone else joked about how they might need to start cloning Mia if this kept happening. But beneath their light-hearted remarks, there was an undeniable thread of admiration. They respected her, not because she was perfect, but because she stepped up when no one else did. In a world where many people would have complained or walked away, Mia chose to stay and fight. Alan felt a pang of guilt. How had he not noticed someone like Mia sooner? As the owner of Bella's Bistro, it was his responsibility to ensure that hard-working employees were recognized and rewarded. Yet here she was, going above and beyond without expecting anything in return. He wondered what drove her to work so selflessly. Was it ambition? A sense of duty? Or maybe something deeper? When the kitchen finally began to wind down, Alan decided to linger a little longer. He wandered into the dining area, pretending to check his phone while eavesdropping on snippets of conversation among the remaining staff. One of the waiters mentioned how grateful he was for Mia's help that night. "She saved my butt out there," he admitted, laughing weakly. Another nodded in agreement, adding, "Yeah, I don't know what we'd do without her." Alan's curiosity grew. Who was this girl who had become the backbone of his restaurant in just one evening? He made a mental note to look into her file first thing in the morning. For now, though, he wanted to see her one last time before heading home. By the time Alan stepped outside, Mia was already waiting at the bus stop a block away. She stood alone, clutching her bag tightly, her breath visible in the chilly night air. Despite her obvious fatigue, she still carried herself with dignity. Alan hesitated, tempted to approach her and thank her personally, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the fear of intruding on her privacy, or perhaps he sensed that this moment wasn't about him, it was about her. Whatever the reason, he decided to hold back. Instead, Alan followed her discreetly, keeping a safe distance as she boarded the bus. He noted which direction it headed and waited until it disappeared around the corner before turning back toward his car. On the drive home, his thoughts swirled with questions. Where did Mia live? What was her story? Why did she care so much about Bella's when others clearly didn't? These were answers he couldn't find tonight, but he resolved to uncover them soon. That night, as Mia settled into her tiny apartment, she thought about the events of the day. It hadn't been easy, but she took pride in knowing she'd made a difference. She lived alone in a modest one-bedroom flat, sharing the space with memories of her younger siblings, whom she supported financially. Life hadn't been kind to Mia. Her parents had passed away unexpectedly a few years ago, leaving her responsible for raising her brother and sister. Balancing work, school, and family obligations was exhausting, but Mia refused to give up. Bella's Bistro wasn't just a job to her, it was a lifeline. It provided stability, a steady paycheck, and a chance to pursue her dream of someday managing her own restaurant. Meanwhile, Alan sat in his study, staring at the ceiling as he replayed the evening in his mind. He realized that Mia represented everything he admired about the hospitality industry: the grit, the determination, the willingness to put others first. But more importantly, she reminded him of why he'd fallen in love with Bella's in the first place. Somewhere along the way, he'd lost sight of the human element of his business. He'd become preoccupied with spreadsheets and profit margins, forgetting that restaurants were built on relationships with customers, with staff, and with the community. Determined to make a change, Alan grabbed a notebook and began jotting down ideas. He wrote about creating new opportunities for employees, restructuring shifts to prevent burnout, and implementing programs to reward exceptional performance. Each idea flowed naturally from the lessons he'd learned that night. By the time he finally went to bed, dawn was breaking over the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and pink. Alan fell asleep with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing exactly what he needed to do next. The following morning, Alan arrived at Bella's earlier than usual. He pulled out the employee files and flipped through them until he found Mia's. Her application was simple, almost unremarkable: a high school diploma, part-time college courses, and a list of references praising her reliability and work ethic. There was nothing flashy about her resume, yet Alan could see glimpses of the person he'd observed the previous night. According to her file, Mia had been with Bella's for 2 years, steadily picking up extra shifts whenever possible. She received glowing reviews from both colleagues and customers, yet her salary remained modest and she hadn't been considered for advancement. Alan frowned, realizing how much he'd overlooked. He knew he couldn't undo the past, but he could shape the future. Inspired by Mia's dedication, he called a meeting with his management team. Together, they brainstormed ways to recognize and reward employees who went above and beyond. They discussed creating a new position, an assistant manager role, and Alan immediately knew who he wanted to fill it. If Mia was willing, she could be the face of this new initiative, leading by example and inspiring others to follow suit. By noon, posters announcing the Employee Excellence Program hung in the break room, encouraging staff to apply for leadership roles. Alan hoped Mia would take the leap. Little did he know, his decision to step back and observe had set off a chain reaction, one that would not only transform Mia's life, but also breathe new life into Bella's Bistro itself. For now, however, Alan sat quietly in his office, waiting for the clock to tick closer to Mia's shift. He didn't know how she would react to his offer, but one thing was certain. She had earned it. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Bella's Bistro, casting golden streaks across the polished wooden floors. Alan Carter sat at his desk in the back office, a steaming cup of coffee beside him as he reviewed the notes he'd scribbled late the previous night. His mind was racing with ideas. How to reward Mia, how to inspire other employees, and most importantly, how to rekindle the spirit of loyalty and passion that had once defined Bella's. For too long, he realized, he'd let the business operate on autopilot. He'd focused on numbers instead of people, on profit margins instead of purpose. Watching Mia work tirelessly the night before had been a wake-up call, a reminder of why he'd fallen in love with the restaurant industry in the first place. Alan leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against the desk as he thought about what came next. Promoting Mia wasn't just about giving her a raise or a fancy title. It was about recognizing her potential and investing in her growth. He envisioned her not just as an assistant manager, but as someone who could shape the future of Bella's. She had proven herself capable of handling pressure, leading by example, and inspiring others. Now it was time to give her the tools and opportunities she needed to thrive. With that in mind, Alan called a meeting with his management team. They gathered around the small conference table in the office, notebooks in hand, ready to discuss the latest developments. Alan opened the conversation by sharing his observations from the previous evening. He described how Mia had stepped up when the restaurant was short-staffed, taking on tasks far beyond her job description. She didn't complain, he said, his voice filled with admiration. She didn't ask for help. She simply got to work because she knew it was the right thing to do. His managers nodded, some of them already aware of Mia's dedication. One of them mentioned how she often volunteered for extra shifts, while another praised her ability to handle difficult customers with grace. It was clear that Mia wasn't just respected by her peers, she was admired. Alan seized the moment to introduce his idea, creating a formal program to recognize and reward exceptional employees like Mia. He proposed calling it the Employee Excellence Program, designed to identify staff members who consistently went above and beyond and provide them with opportunities for advancement. The room buzzed with excitement as they brainstormed ways to make the program impactful. Together, they outlined several key components. First, there would be monthly evaluations where employees could nominate their co-workers for outstanding performance. Second, selected candidates would receive bonuses, additional training, and mentorship from senior staff. Finally, top performers would be eligible for promotions into leadership roles, starting with the newly created position of assistant manager. This role would involve overseeing daily operations, mentoring new hires, and ensuring high standards of service were maintained. Once the details were ironed out, Alan asked his team to draft a formal announcement and post it in the break room. By noon, colorful posters with bold lettering hung prominently on the walls, catching the attention of everyone who passed by. The headline read, "Join the Employee Excellence Program, be recognized, grow your career." Beneath it was a brief description of the initiative along with instructions for applying. Employees began gathering around the posters, whispering excitedly about the possibilities. Meanwhile, Alan couldn't stop thinking about Mia. He knew she was the perfect candidate for the assistant manager role, but he also understood that offering her the position outright might come across as favoritism. Instead, he decided to wait and see if she applied on her own. If she did, it would show initiative, a quality he valued deeply in leaders. But even if she didn't, he planned to reach out personally and encourage her to consider the opportunity. The day wore on. Alan busied himself with other tasks, trying to distract himself from the anticipation building inside him. He checked inventory reports, reviewed upcoming reservations, and even spent some time chatting with regular customers who stopped by for lunch. Yet no matter how hard he tried to focus, his thoughts kept drifting back to Mia. Who was she outside of work? What challenges had shaped her into the person she was today? He wanted to know more, not just as her employer, but as someone genuinely interested in her story. That afternoon, Alan took a break and wandered into the kitchen, hoping to overhear more conversations about the new program. Sure enough, the staff was buzzing with excitement. One of the cooks joked that he'd finally have to step up his game if he wanted to compete with Mia. Another employee teased that the barista might start bribing customers for good reviews. Amidst the laughter, Alan noticed something remarkable. Morale seemed higher than it had been in months. The mere possibility of recognition and advancement had reignited a sense of hope among the team. By early evening, Alan returned to his office to finalize the interview questions for the assistant manager role. He wanted the process to be thorough yet fair, ensuring that whoever was chosen truly deserved the position. As he worked, he reflected on his own journey as a leader. Running Bella's had taught him many lessons, but perhaps the most important one was this: success wasn't measured by profits or accolades. It was measured by the impact you had on others. And right now, Mia was proving to be a shining example of that philosophy. Later that night, as the restaurant closed and the last of the staff clocked out, Alan stayed behind to prepare for the next day. He arranged the interview schedule, double-checked the application forms, and made sure everything was ready for Mia or any other interested employee to take the next step. Then, just as he was about to leave, he spotted a familiar figure walking toward the break room. It was Mia, returning from her shift. She looked tired but content, her uniform slightly wrinkled from hours of non-stop work. Alan hesitated, debating whether to approach her. In the end, he decided to let her discover the program on her own terms. Quietly, he slipped out the back door and headed home, his heart full of anticipation. Tomorrow would be a big day, not just for Mia, but for Bella's. As a whole, change was coming, and Alan couldn't wait to see where it would lead. The next morning, Mia arrived at Bella's early the following afternoon, eager to start her shift. She always liked coming in a little ahead of schedule to review the day's reservations and prepare for the busy hours ahead. But today, something felt different. As she clocked in, her manager handed her a folded piece of paper. "This is for you," he said with a warm smile. Confused, Mia opened the letter and began reading. Her eyes widened as she absorbed the words. The letter praised her recent efforts, highlighting how she'd kept the restaurant running smoothly, despite being understaffed. It invited her to apply for the newly created position of assistant manager, emphasizing that her leadership skills and commitment to excellence made her an ideal candidate. By the time she reached the end, tears welled up in her eyes. For months, she'd dreamed of advancing in her career but never thought it possible. Now, here was proof that someone had noticed her hard work and believed in her potential. Mia clutched the letter tightly, her hands trembling with emotion. Growing up, she'd learned to rely on herself, to push through challenges without expecting help from others. Losing her parents had forced her to grow up quickly, shouldering responsibilities that most people her age couldn't imagine. Working at Bella's had given her stability, a steady paycheck to support her siblings and flexible hours to attend college part-time. But deep down, she harbored dreams of doing more, of making a real difference in the world. This opportunity felt like a miracle. When Mia met Alan for the interview later that day, she immediately recognized him as the man from the corner table the previous evening. Embarrassed, she apologized for not realizing he was the owner sooner. Alan chuckled and waved off her apology, assuring her it was fine. During the interview, he learned about her aspirations to manage her own restaurant someday, and her determination to create a space where people felt valued and cared for. Impressed by her vision and dedication, Alan offered her the role on the spot. As Mia accepted the offer, tears streaming down her face, Alan felt a surge of pride. He knew he'd made the right decision. By recognizing and rewarding loyalty, he'd strengthened his team and reconnected with his purpose. Together, they turned Bella's Bistro into more than just a restaurant. It became a place where lives changed one meal at a time. For now, though, Alan watched quietly as Mia walked away, her head held high and a newfound confidence in her step. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time in a long while, Alan felt hopeful. Change had begun, and it started with Mia. The morning after her promotion, Mia woke up with a mix of excitement and disbelief. She lay in bed for a few extra minutes, staring at the ceiling as sunlight streamed through the cracks in her blinds. Her mind replayed the events of the previous day, the letter inviting her to apply for the assistant manager position, the interview with Alan, and finally, his offer to hire her on the spot. It all felt surreal, like something out of a movie. For so long, she'd worked tirelessly, pouring every ounce of energy into Bella's Bistro without expecting anything in return. Now someone had noticed. Someone believed in her. As she got ready for work, Mia couldn't help but think about how much this opportunity meant, not just for her, but for her younger siblings too. Ever since their parents passed away, Mia had taken on the role of caregiver, working multiple jobs to ensure they had food on the table and clothes on their backs. College classes had been squeezed into late nights and weekends, leaving little time for rest or relaxation. But now, with a higher salary and better hours, she could finally breathe easier. And maybe, just maybe, she could start dreaming bigger. When Mia arrived at Bella's that afternoon, everything seemed different. The familiar sights and smells of the restaurant greeted her as always. But there was an added weight to her presence. Now, she wasn't just another server, she was part of the leadership team. Employees nodded respectfully as she walked by, some offering congratulations or quick smiles. One of the cooks even teased, "Guess we'll have to call you boss lady now." Mia laughed it off, though inside she felt a flutter of pride. This was her chance to prove herself, to show everyone that she deserved this role. Alan was waiting for her in the office when she clocked in. He greeted her warmly, handing over a binder filled with notes, schedules, and guidelines for her new responsibilities. "Welcome to the team, officially," he said with a grin. "I know you're going to do great things here." Mia nodded, feeling a surge of determination. She didn't want to let him or herself down. Over the next hour, Alan walked her through the basics of managing daily operations, overseeing staff shifts, handling customer complaints, maintaining quality control in the kitchen, and ensuring the dining area stayed clean and welcoming. There was a lot to learn, but Mia soaked it all in, asking thoughtful questions and taking detailed notes. By the time they finished, the dinner rush was beginning to pick up. Alan encouraged Mia to shadow the current manager, Sarah, for the evening so she could see firsthand how things were handled during busy periods. Sarah, a seasoned professional with years of experience, welcomed Mia warmly and immediately put her to work. Together, they coordinated the front-of-house staff, making sure tables were cleared promptly, orders were accurate, and customers left happy. At one point, a large group arrived without a reservation, causing a minor panic among the servers. Without missing a beat, Mia stepped in, rearranging seating arrangements and personally greeting the guests to ease their frustration. By the end of the night, the situation had been resolved smoothly, earning praise from both staff and customers alike. Watching Mia handle the chaos with such poise, Alan felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He knew he'd made the right decision. Not only was Mia capable of managing the logistical challenges of running a restaurant, but she also had the interpersonal skills necessary to lead a team. Her ability to connect with people, from nervous trainees to demanding customers, was invaluable. As the evening wound down, Alan pulled Sarah aside and asked for her thoughts. "She's a natural," Sarah replied without hesitation. "You won't regret promoting her." Over the following weeks, Mia threw herself into her new role with unmatched enthusiasm. She spent countless hours learning the ins and outs of management, from inventory tracking to budgeting. She attended workshops and online courses recommended by Alan, determined to improve her skills. But what truly set her apart was her approach to leadership. Unlike some managers who focus solely on rules and efficiency, Mia prioritized relationships. She took the time to get to know each employee, listening to their concerns and celebrating their successes. When a new hire struggled to keep up, Mia stayed late to mentor them. When a veteran cook expressed interest in culinary school, she helped him research scholarships. Slowly but surely, the culture of Bella's began to shift. Employees noticed the change almost immediately. Morale improved as people felt valued and supported. Servers who had once dreaded coming to work now looked forward to their shifts, knowing they had a manager who genuinely cared about their well-being. Even the kitchen staff, notorious for being tight-lipped, started opening up during breaks, sharing stories and laughter. Customers picked up on the positive energy too. Reviews poured in praising not only the food but also the exceptional service. One regular wrote, "Bella's feels like home again. Everyone goes above and beyond to make you feel welcome." Alan watched it all unfold with quiet pride. He hadn't expected Mia to transform the restaurant so quickly, or so completely. What amazed him most was how seamlessly she balanced authority with kindness. She held people accountable when necessary, but she did so with empathy and understanding. When a waiter accidentally spilled wine on a customer's lap, Mia didn't scold him. Instead, she guided him through, apologizing sincerely and comped the meal, turning a potentially disastrous situation into a moment of goodwill. Later, she sat down with the waiter privately, offering tips on staying calm under pressure. "We're all human," she told him gently. "Mistakes happen. What matters is how we fix them." Her philosophy resonated deeply with Alan. It reminded him of the values his parents had instilled in him when they first opened Bella's decades ago. Back then, the restaurant hadn't been about making money. It had been about creating a space where people felt loved and cared for. Somewhere along the way, Alan had lost sight of that mission. Mia's presence reignited it, reminding him why he'd fallen in love with the hospitality industry in the first place. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Alan invited Mia to join him for dinner. They sat at a corner table near the window, plates of pasta steaming between them. For the first time since her promotion, Alan wanted to hear more about Mia's personal life. "Tell me about your dreams," he said as they sipped glasses of red wine. "Where do you see yourself in 5 years? 10? Mia hesitated, surprised by the question. She rarely talked about her aspirations, fearing they might sound unrealistic. But something about Alan's genuine curiosity put her at ease. Taking a deep breath, she began to share. She spoke about her goal of owning her own restaurant someday, a cozy bistro where families could gather, where employees felt like family, and where creativity and passion thrived. She envisioned hosting cooking classes for kids, partnering with local farmers to source fresh ingredients, and giving back to the community that had supported her during tough times. As she spoke, her eyes lit up with excitement, and Alan listened intently, nodding along. "I believe in you," he said when she finished, "and I want to help you get there." He explained that Bella's would cover part of her tuition for advanced hospitality courses, allowing her to pursue formal training while continuing to work. Additionally, he promised to serve as a mentor, guiding her through the complexities of running a business. Tears welled up in Mia's eyes as she thanked him, overwhelmed by his generosity. For so long, she'd carried the weight of her ambitions alone. Now, for the first time, she had someone in her corner, someone who believed in her enough to invest in her future. As the weeks turned into months, Mia's impact on Bella's became undeniable. Under her leadership, the restaurant flourished. Staff turnover decreased significantly, thanks to her efforts to create a supportive work environment. Customer satisfaction soared, leading to increased revenue and glowing reviews online. Employees began referring to her as the Heart of Bella's, a nickname that stuck because it perfectly captured her essence. She wasn't just a manager, she was the glue holding everything together. For Alan, watching Mia succeed was a reminder of what truly mattered. It wasn't about profits or accolades. It was about building something meaningful, something that touched lives. Thanks to Mia, Bella's had become more than just a restaurant. It was a place where people came not only for delicious meals, but also for connection, inspiration, and hope. As they raised their glasses in a toast that evening, both Mia and Alan felt a profound sense of gratitude for each other, for the journey ahead, and for the magic of second chances. Little did they know, this was only the beginning. Months passed, and Bella's Bistro transformed into a place that felt alive in ways it hadn't been in years. The changes weren't just visible, they were palpable. Customers who walked through the door noticed the difference immediately. The staff greeted them with genuine warmth, remembering regulars by name and their favorite dishes. The dining area sparkled with cleanliness, and the kitchen hummed with efficiency. Every detail, from the perfectly folded napkins to the carefully plated meals, reflected care and pride. At the heart of it all was Mia, whose leadership had breathed new life into the restaurant. Mia's journey wasn't without its challenges, though. As she settled into her role as assistant manager, she faced moments of self-doubt. Could she really handle the weight of responsibility? Was she making the right decisions? There were days when things didn't go as planned. A delayed shipment left the kitchen short on ingredients, or an unexpected staff shortage caused chaos during peak hours. But every time doubt crept in, Mia reminded herself of why she was here. She thought about her siblings counting on her to provide for them. She remembered the sacrifices her parents had made to give her a better life. And most importantly, she recalled Alan's words during their dinner conversation. "I believe in you." With determination, Mia tackled each challenge head-on. When supplies ran low, she worked with the chef to create innovative dishes using what they had. When staff members called in sick, she rolled up her sleeves and stepped in wherever needed, setting an example for others to follow. Her resilience inspired those around her. Employees began volunteering for extra shifts, knowing Mia would support them in return. Even seasoned veterans who had initially doubted her abilities because of her age came to respect her deeply. They saw her not just as a manager, but as someone who genuinely cared about their success. Alan watched Mia's growth with admiration. He marveled at how effortlessly she balanced authority and compassion, creating an environment where people wanted to excel. Under her guidance, Bella's became more than just a workplace, it became a community. Staff meetings turned into brainstorming sessions, where everyone felt comfortable sharing ideas. Servers collaborated with cooks to suggest menu improvements, while hosts proposed creative ways to enhance customer experiences. It was clear that Mia had fostered a culture of teamwork and innovation. One evening, as the restaurant buzzed with activity, Alan pulled Mia aside after her shift ended. "Let's talk," he said, gesturing toward his office. Curious, Mia followed him inside. The room was cozy yet professional, with shelves lined with cookbooks and framed photos of Bella's over the years. Alan motioned for her to sit, his expression serious but kind. For a moment, Mia wondered if something was wrong. Had she made a mistake? Was there bad news? Instead, Alan surprised her. He pulled out a folder and handed it to her. Inside were documents outlining a proposal, a partnership agreement between him and Mia. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You've done incredible work here, and I can see your vision for the future. What do you say we take this to the next level?" He explained that he wanted to make her a co-owner of Bella's Bistro. Together, they could expand the business, open new locations, and continue building on the foundation she'd helped strengthen. Mia stared at the papers, her hands trembling slightly. This was far beyond anything she'd ever imagined. Becoming assistant manager had already felt like a dream come true. But co-ownership? It seemed almost too good to be true. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at Alan, unsure of what to say. Finally, she managed to whisper, "Are you sure?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," Alan replied with a smile. "You've earned this, Mia. You've shown me what it means to lead with heart, and I know you'll carry Bella's legacy forward." The news spread quickly among the staff. When Mia shared the announcement during the next team meeting, cheers erupted throughout the room. Employees hugged her, congratulating her on the well-deserved promotion. Some even joked that they'd have to start calling her boss lady for real now. Despite the playful teasing, everyone felt a renewed sense of pride in working at Bella's. If someone like Mia could rise from being a waitress to becoming a co-owner, then anything was possible. As co-owner, Mia threw herself into expanding Bella's reach. With Alan's support, she spearheaded initiatives to give back to the community. They partnered with local schools to host fundraisers, donated leftover food to shelters, and organized cooking classes for underprivileged youth. One of her proudest achievements was launching a scholarship program for employees pursuing careers in hospitality. It was her way of paying forward the opportunities Alan had given her. Her siblings also benefited from her success. With her increased income, Mia was able to enroll them in better schools and provide stability they hadn't known since losing their parents. On weekends, they often visited Bella's, marveling at how much their sister had accomplished. Seeing her confidence and happiness filled them with hope for their own futures. For Alan, stepping back and sharing ownership of Bella's brought a sense of peace. Running the restaurant had been his life's work, but it had consumed him at times. Now with Mia by his side, he could focus on mentoring her and enjoying the fruits of their labor. Together, they dreamed of opening a second location, a larger space with outdoor seating and live music nights. Plans were already underway, and excitement buzzed in the air. One crisp autumn evening, Alan and Mia hosted a special event at Bella's to celebrate the restaurant's revival. Longtime customers, loyal employees, and friends gathered to honor the journey that had brought them all together. Speeches were made, laughter echoed through the dining area, and plates of delicious food were passed around. As Alan stood at the podium addressing the crowd, his voice cracked with emotion. "Bella's isn't just a restaurant," he said. "It's a family. And tonight I'm proud to say that our family has grown stronger than ever." When it was Mia's turn to speak, she took a deep breath, her heart swelling with gratitude. She thanked Alan for believing in her colleagues for supporting her, and the customers for trusting Bella's with their memories. "This place has given me so much more than a job," she said, her voice trembling. "It's taught me that hard work pays off, that kindness matters, and that no dream is too big if you're willing to fight for it." The room erupted in applause, tears shining in many eyes. After the speeches, Alan raised his glass for a toast. "To Bella's Bistro," he said, his gaze sweeping across the room, "and to the people who make it special, past, present, and future." Everyone clinked glasses, savoring the moment. In the months that followed, Mia continued to grow as a leader and entrepreneur. She enrolled in advanced business courses, learning strategies to scale Bella's operations while maintaining its soul. Alan remained her mentor, offering advice and encouragement whenever she needed it. Their partnership blossomed, built on mutual respect and shared values. Looking back, Mia realized how far she'd come, from juggling multiple jobs to support her family, to standing beside Alan as co-owner of Bella's. Her journey had been anything but easy. But every step, every late night, every sacrifice, every challenge overcome, had been worth it. She had found her purpose, and in doing so, she had inspired countless others to chase their dreams. As winter approached, Bella's prepared for the holiday season, decking the halls with twinkling lights and festive decorations. The restaurant buzzed with anticipation, ready to welcome old friends and new faces alike. For Mia, this time of year held special meaning. It reminded her of the importance of gratitude, connection, and giving back. As she walked through the dining area one evening, checking on tables and chatting with customers, she paused for a moment to take it all in. The warm glow of the lights, the aroma of freshly baked bread, the sound of laughter filling the air, it was everything she'd ever hoped for. Bella's wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of community, and proof that even the humblest beginnings could lead to extraordinary outcomes. And as she stood there, surrounded by the people she loved and the place she cherished, Mia knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning.